Hello, my beautiful souls. Welcome to season 3 of Magic Exists podcast with Danny Margot. This is a podcast for anyone on their spiritual awakening or personal development journey who is moving from third dimensional living to fifth dimensional being. This is a podcast for magical embodiment and becoming an embodiment of the magic that you truly are. Thank you for being born. Thank you for existing. And thank you for being here. In today's episode, we have Gigi here to talk about 3 magic words by Yuel S. Anderson. And so, first off, Gigi is amazing. She is a coach and a manifestation YouTuber. Her YouTube is Journey with Gigi, and she talks so much about manifestation, the law of attraction, and so many different things. I think she's just going to be such a valuable person to kind of just go back and forth with this book because honestly, it's so dense. And I think a lot of what I'm going to share is just me logically or trying to process like what I read in these like not even 200 pages, but honestly felt like a complete like shift. So first, tell me a little bit about yourself, Gigi, and then we're going to go into the book.
Yes. Thank you so much, Danny, for having me on here. And as you mentioned, it's just so on point with everything I've been studying and teaching for the past several years. Everything that Ewell S. Anderson says in the book is like right on par with what I've talked about in my YouTube channel videos with Neville Goddard, who's another New Thought author, Law of Attraction, Law of Assumption. And this is really so validating because I have a little like history lesson too. All of the teachers that we listen to now, Danny, are reflecting all of these principles that were like early in the 1900s and, of course, originating from way before then. And like Dr. Joe Dispenza and like all these people that are going viral now on social media are echoing the exact same sentiments about how we can free ourselves, free our minds from the confines of what some people like to call the matrix. And it was just really mind blowing to see how he put it so simply and eloquently. And it all just was so comforting and confirming. Everything that I've been trying to like put into concise words, he basically spelled out in 12 chapters. So that's my little enthusiastic preview ramble about how all the work we've been doing and how we met. Soul reading method, shout out Nikki Novo. With intuition development, it all relates with the work you do, being an intuitive guide and Reiki master and healer and psychic. It's fascinating. And again, it is reassuring that it all ties together and it's not like, oh, this book is saying this and it contradicts that. Like it all overlaps and intertwines. So yeah, I'm
Yeah.
really excited to dive
Before
in.
we get started, yes, we met 3 years ago and are so like lucky and grateful to still have you in my life. And so you talked about the law of attraction and the law of assumption. And I've been to your workshops and you have a YouTube channel that just so, I feel like you simply say things too in a way that's just like so profound and in truth. And it's like these 7 to 10 minute videos or even 12 minutes. And then it's just like, oh yeah, fear gone. Like, it's just like, oh, so potent. So if you could share a little bit of like your background with that, just in case no one's ever heard of like maybe the law of assumption.
Yeah. And it's funny how the law of assumption, the law of attraction really are part of the same law, which is the first principle of, I don't know if anyone has read the Kabbalion. It is essentially like one of the universal laws that is all is mind. And so the law of attraction and the law of assumption are just two sides of the same coin of all is mind. The law of attraction just approaches that law from the sense of what you're focusing on, what you're vibrating on is coming to you as if you're attracting it. Whereas the law of assumption is more just about focusing on embodying the state, deciding it's done, it's already finished, and noticing the breadcrumb trail as it's coming to you, but already embodying it as if it's already happened, not constantly being like, oh, I have to attract this and chase this. So personally, I tend to lean more towards the law of assumption side of things because I've noticed in the law of attraction community, sometimes there are rules that are unnecessary that are created and people kind of come up with these fancy, I guess, prerequisites to feel like you have to attract things to you. And it kind of becomes like this chase where it really doesn't have to be. But I also think the law of attraction, when it's approached in a more calm, grounded way, can be amazing. And like I said, it's two sides of the same coin. So to really simplify it, I would think of the law of assumption as mainly embodiment of a state and conviction, which U.S. Anderson talks about conviction in your truth and what you know is your destiny, what you want in life, and then just allowing the bridge of incidents, the little breadcrumb trail to unfold more so than feeling like I have to be in this perfect, like non-fluctuating high frequency all the time, or else I'm not going to get it, which sometimes I hate to say it. The Secret, for example, it tends to go down that path a little bit where it's like, do not think of negative things. And U.S. Anderson says that too. And so it's funny how there's like a push and pull because it's like, how realistic is that to
Yes.
never be able
Yeah,
to
because you have to
fluctuate?
embody it, because you have to become the vessel of the frequency. You can't just hold it because
Yeah.
that's exhausting. And so, like, what is
Hmm.
underneath that? That's limiting that capacity to hold the abundance, the money, the success, which U.S. Anderson goes in so deep. And I love, okay, so summary of the book. I'm
Yes.
just going to read it from the back because I feel like I can't shift, but pretty much you create everything that you think of. Every single thing, and you are God. So if you are God, you are limitless, you are perfect. And so that is kind of like the root of
Those are the
like
three magic words.
wait, what are
Spoiler alert.
wait, what does he say are the 3 magic words? I don't even know
You
if
are
I
God.
Oh, okay.
I know, and it's just funny how he builds up. I mean, it's not funny, but you get what I'm saying. Like everyone is always laughing about this book because he doesn't make it clear the first 11 chapters, and then finally by chapter 12, he just sneaks it in there, and you almost miss it because it seems like such a foregone conclusion. Like he's been leading up to the fact that you are source, you have all this power within, like, and then he just throws it in there. You're God. Okay, moving on. Like
Wait, that's hilarious because I obviously subconsciously got it, but didn't actually comprehend
the
that
three
those are the
magic
3
words.
magic words. That's hilarious.
Oh my
Okay,
gosh.
so I'll
And
just read yeah, go on.
also, sorry, really quick. I was just going to say, you put this so beautifully. So I really need to like commend you for this.
Yeah.
When he's saying God, just for anyone who might be like brand new to your podcast or like, what are you saying? It's God consciousness. It's source. It's infinite intelligence. It's not, God complex, egomaniac type of, I'm going to rule the world and control everything. In fact, he spent multiple chapters talking about how you should surrender to infinite intelligence and the higher self and not think that your little tiny self, are controlling everything. So just want to make that super clear. He's not saying like, go on a power trip and start ordering people around like you're God, because that's absolutely not the point. But it's your source, it's your consciousness, unconditional love. And that's your essence, is basically what he's saying.
I love that clarification. Yes, thank you. Because he says it's interchangeable. God consciousness is how I see it. And then also he uses the word universal subconscious mind, which is how
Hmm.
he kind of perceives it. But he's like, in any context, it could be divine source, etc. Yes, I love that so much. Okay, so in the pages of this book, you will learn of the unlimited power that is yours. You will learn how to turn this power to work for you here on earth to make your life majestic and overflowing with good. This is not a religion or a society. It is entirely a series of essays aimed to reveal to you your power over all things. You will learn that there is only one mover in all creation, and the mover is thought. You will learn that there is only one creator, and the creator is the universal subconscious mind or God. You will learn that this creator creates for you exactly what you think, and you will be shown how you can control your thoughts, not only to obtain answers to your problems, but to create in your experience exactly what you desire. You will not do this in a day or a week or even a month, but do it you will if you keep heart and keep faith. It requires only a few minutes of your time each day, a few minutes that will reward you with greater vistas in life, greater hope and purpose that has ever been dreamed. This is a cause, this is a reason, this is a power greater than you are, which you are a part of, which you can use to make your life good and great and vigorous and full of abundance. All things are possible to him who believes. And I want you to share a little bit because I know you mentioned you did a little deep dive on the author, which I did not.
Hmm.
And so I want just so you get a reference point of when this was like written, because I noticed there is 2 versions. the one with the little, what do you call them? The spinning wheels? With the
Yeah,
knobs?
the
What are the
gears. Very
gears, and then there's
interesting.
the other one that looks like a rainbow. So the rainbow one is on Spotify, and I think it's the new abridged version that has, like, Eckhart Tolle praising it and other people, and they add
Mhm.
a lot of, like, Jesus references, and then the original one doesn't. So, just go to which whenever you feel called
Yeah.
to. They added a couple more things to, like, the newer version.
And to add another fun thing into the mix, I don't know if it's just a different cover design, but I saw another girl sharing it and it had like it looked like atoms or some kind of like
I think I saw
scientific
that. They're, like,
symbol.
red atoms or something instead of
Yeah,
the
so
knobs.
I'm like, is
Yes.
there even another version? But for context, this was written in the 50s and I'm a little nerd. I wrote handwritten notes because I was like,
I
I
love
need
it.
to know like what perspective he was writing this from. So U.S. Anderson, Ewell Stanley Anderson, Norwegian American parents. So that's why his name is a little bit unique. He went to Stanford University, played in the NFL in like the 50s, which is kind of cool, was a naval officer in World War II, and then was also an entrepreneur who ran a successful ad agency in LA and had other business endeavors and investments that made him extremely wealthy, including oil and a sawmill. And so he studied throughout all of his ventures because he was a very high achieving man, of course. He studied spiritual teachers like Mary Baker Eddy, who she was the one who wrote Science and Health, which was a very Jesus based healing, like thinking of the Bible as a way to heal yourself. And he studied that a lot, which really inspired a lot of his work, including this book, how you could use the mind and the Bible and the teachings of Jesus really to emulate Jesus and try to heal yourself, tap into unconditional love, live a better life. And then also Ernest Holmes, who was one of my favorites, William Blake, Edgar Casey, who is very famous in when you think about hypnosis and past life regression. A lot of people reference Casey and other ancient hermetic principles like the Kabbalion that I referenced earlier, which is like based on hermetic principles. So he started teaching these classes because he was so passionate about this work, right? So it said he taught a small class in LA on New Thought concepts in 1952, and the notes from that class that he taught he adapted into Three Magic Words, which was published in 1954. So it's just interesting to think of the context of who were the people that were on the cutting edge who were attending these small classes. Like, how did this New Thought movement gain traction when a lot of people were very fundamentalist Christian? A lot of people were just more traditional religious and maybe would have considered this work like against religion and contradicting, what they learned in a more rigid, dogmatic context. Like he had to have a lot of courage because back then, think about the 50s, think about 1950s America, like people are a little bit more maybe by the book with things. So I thought it was really cool that he came up with a lot of unique terms also. I just wanted to kind of make a side note for anyone who reads this book. I highly encourage you to like look up what he means by the unique definitions of words like the lock he mentions. And then what was the other one? He mentions prompters. He mentions habits of consciousness. And you might think, oh, I know what that means. But like when he says the lock, he means accumulated subconscious conditioning that prevents us from fully expressing our creative mind and spiritual power. So that's like a very vague term to relate to a very big concept. And then another one I'll say quickly is prompters, deeply buried emotional memories, usually painful ones, that continue prompting our reactions, expectations, and behavior without our conscious awareness. So these are two things he talks about a lot in this book and that he also taught about back in the day, that overcoming those two things is part of what sets us free and allows us to manifest everything we want. So that's
That's
just like
so
a
beautiful.
a big overview. I probably missed a lot, but it's always helpful to be like, where was this person coming from? And were they just sitting alone in their basement coming up with these things? Or were they actually living life and applying what they taught,
Which sounds like it was him. He was this predominant figure. and his, like, friend who he went to Stanford with was, like, the coach of the Rams, and just, like, he lived it, it seemed like, and you know what's interesting? I was feeling into the energy of this book because he has, like, these lessons, and they feel very potent, and we'll get into it shortly, but then there's this, like, homework and meditation after each
Mhm.
lesson, and I didn't do all of them for the sake of the podcast because I was kinda rushing through it, but I did do the last one, and I think the first, second, third, and then last one. But I will say, like, it's channel text. And so I felt into the energy of who it was channeled from, and I got Ascended Masters, the Divine Fathers, which I was like, "This is
Wow,
really
chills.
interesting." Yeah, which is like Jesus, Yeshua, Buddha. So I was like, "Okay." Like, and it felt just like I had never really connected to that specific energy before, like just them. I work a lot with the Divine Mother. So it was really beautiful that, I mean, of course, this is a channel text, but through experience and
Yeah.
through God consciousness and this universal super conscious or subconscious mind. But yeah,
The divine
let's get
masculine. Wow, yeah, that's
yeah.
so cool.
So there's definitely layers. I feel like he pretty much says like the same thing, but for like different categories of your life to really anchor it in to like your being.
Mhm.
Okay, so yeah, chapter 1 is the lock.
I actually have a quote, if you don't
Yeah,
mind.
yeah, go for it. Like, let's just, like, go for it.
It is important for you to remember every day of your life that the same power that brings you good fortune brings you bad fortune. The subconscious mind does exactly what the conscious mind tells it to do. Know that fear is your enemy and understand the lock. So that is just kind of a little teaser to go into what he's talking about. He starts off very strong, Danny. I'm sure you noticed that too. You were like, "Whoa,
Yes.
what are we talking about here?"
And just the way he says it. So I'll also offer you a quote where he's like, "Your body is an embodiment of life. It is an expression of life, for through your body, your spirit expresses itself. For God is perfect, spirit is perfect, and the body that expresses them must be perfect. Your body is simply a manifestation of the spirit, a changing form from the eternal substance, even as all form must change." It is difficult to analyze and probe this mystery of the conscious mind, and it is relatively simple to demonstrate to the conscious mind the existence of infinite spiritual power. And I love how he weaves in, like, he understands intuition and faith, and he understands like the spiritual aspects, but then he also always comes down to like the thought. And I feel like the subconscious, I always thought was like a byproduct of the spiritual creator, of God consciousness, but the way he talks about it, and tell me how, if you interpret it differently, it's
Mhm.
all one because we are all one. And it's
Yes.
like something I understand in my body, but in my mind, I'm still in that like logical separateness. And so for him to say like intuition is actually a component of the human mind, it's like, oh, so like all of us thinking, oh, you're psychic, I'm psychic. Oh, but this person's not psychic. It's actually, we all have access to that, which I've always believed. And so it's so beautiful to see that here. We all have access to it. It's just some people's choice to
Mhm.
access the depth of that intuition, that subconscious, that God consciousness.
Yeah, he does not deny supernatural paranormal occurrences either, which I thought was very refreshing because sometimes when you see new thought authors speaking about these topics that are unexplainable, they're just very like matter of fact, like this is that, this is that, like, but he talked about mediums. I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit now, but and how like objects can move and they can, kind of summon from what he says, the universal mind, the energy of someone who has passed. And that the reason why that works is because, like you said, it's all coming from the same source. And I think, even references way at the end of the book Adeta Vedanta, which I'm probably butchering, but we can maybe put it in the show notes if someone's interested. It's like an ancient Indian text that talks about non-dualism and unity consciousness. And I know for a fact that he is going back to all of those ancient philosophies, not only the authors I mentioned, but like way before that, probably coming from places like India. And it's just cool to see how he's trying to interpret it and give his own spin on things, but ultimately, like the ancient truths are coming from. way before, you know?
I love it. And yeah, he talks about like abundance, money, love, and all these different categories of your life through this lens, and how like your thought, and we kind of jump to the end, but like overall summing that like your presence here on earth and what you create and what you think influences this unity consciousness, this bigger thing. And so oftentimes I had a reading recently where they were like, why is there bad in the world? And they were just, like, heartbroken, right? And from the, like, the soul level that he talks about, like, "Oh, we just God just wants to know itself, and so we produce these things," but, like, ultimately, it's up to you and your thoughts. Like, who do you wanna be, and how do you wanna leave an imprint on this planet? And I took it as, like, I know there's bad, but bad is just so that I can know good and know the sacredness of good. And because of that, I choose good and I choose to be this person that inspires and creates a
Mhm.
business, which I we'll get into this in business, but he literally says creating new businesses, new ideas, and new things is like is the way in the portal to God and abundance. And I was like, yes.
Yes, he was ahead of his time. This is what all the freaking business coaches that's what I was kind of trying to reference earlier, like, I don't say anything about anyone, but when you look at some of the people who are like the big names, everyone's like revolutionary. Actually, they're just saying like what US Anderson was saying way back in the day. Like it's not brand new. Like it's not, think of some of the biggest names in the motivational space and the business coaches who are making multi millions. They're using the same wisdom. Like you could, without paying for a single thing, read this book and apply it and probably get just as much knowledge, which I think you should work with whoever resonates with you. But I was just thinking about that. I totally agree with you, Danny. I was like, wow, if you were to sit down and actually do the exercises, which I need to do, and I loved the first meditation was my favorite one, especially, and the one in the 11th chapter as well. But it is just like this information is just sitting here. And it's like, why is everyone sleeping on it?
Yes.
Like,
Like, and that's why this podcast is here, right? Like to share
yeah.
with people, like books are like portals and this wisdom. There's a reason why this is like almost 5 stars on like Goodreads, and it's
Hmm.
life changing. It's perspective shifting. It's so beautiful. And I want to give an example of just the first um lock, right? Chapter one, where this patient had cancer in her throat, and she went to the x-ray, and then they were like, "Oh, this x-ray is actually gonna cure your throat cancer," because I think x-rays were new and she didn't know, because obviously this was written in the '50s. And so she went to the doctor's office and she thought she was undergoing like an x-ray treatment when it's obviously just an x-ray. And so within, I think, what they say, 3 weeks of the treatment, it was all gone. And so just
Hmm.
proof that like your thought and your perception of reality really does lead to like what you desire. And he goes deeper into health and that like our bodies are manifestations of the thought and like our subconscious and kind of what roots it. But it just a beautiful example of like how he starts out and kind
Yes.
of goes
Thank you for
strong with
bringing
that.
in an example because he had some really good examples in there. And again, thinking about the context of when it was written, I was like, huh, like there was even, this is kind of jumping ahead, but the example of someone who was like working in sales or adding an ad agency or something, and then had a terrible accident where he was like hit by a trolley or something. And, he could never walk again. And everyone was like, well, there go your fortunes. There go, all of the things that you wanted in life, your future is over. And he was like, no, I still have my mind. And he ended up like breaking all these records, being super successful. And even though he couldn't walk anymore, he used his mind, his mindset. And it's like anyone who overcomes something really challenging, sometimes it ends up putting them in a direction because they made that conscious choice, that being the big caveat, because he could have made the choice to just say, yep, my life's over. Especially back then, they didn't have the same resources and technology to help people who had those horrible things happen to them. No, he was like, I'm still going to use my mind. And if I have to build this agency from my bed, I'm going to do it. And he did it before the internet. So I was just like really inspired by those little anecdotes because it's true. Like we really can put our mind over matter, but in this age of instant gratification and constant distraction and comparison, it can be super easy to think this person has it better, or why wasn't I born into that, or blah, 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 blah. And it's like such a waste of our beautiful God given immense creative power that we have.
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback on that because he mentions how, like, Einstein and you or me have the same amount of potential and limitless power, and it's like that comparison that you mentioned, it's like, "Oh, she has it or he has it, I don't have it," and that's a belief, and so he mentions here on page 30, like, "Believe you will fail and you will. Believe you will succeed and you will. Believe you will be well and you will. Believe you are attracted and you will." It's like literally that's it. It's like, but obviously there's so much limiting beliefs. And so something I've been really practicing with is like if there's ever something I'm like, oh, I can't do that or I can't achieve that, I question it or I bring curiosity. Why did I believe that? And is that
Mhm.
actually my truth? And even with like, the whole pregnancy process, like, oh, okay, like you're gonna go to the hospital and you're gonna give birth. And then I was like, wait, is that actually what I want? And now I want a home birth. And there's all these reasons behind that. But it's just like any belief, like, why can't I live at the beach a block away? Oh, yeah, I can, and now I'm here. And so there's
Right.
just so much about like your belief system and like kind of deconstructing it, but obviously taking the time to do it, in the space that we are so distracted.
And it's so easy to count yourself out, unfortunately, because you're just thinking about all the minutia, all the steps of how things are going to unfold and how you need to be micromanaging things. And I even know some women in my life who had super meticulous birth plans, right? Like down to the letter. And then things ended up going completely like off the rails, but it ended up actually in a weird way, spiritually and, emotionally being better and deeper and more fulfilling in the way that it happened versus that meticulous plan that they had like spent so long coming up with. So that's just an example, but I think he talks a lot about surrender and acceptance. And I think that there's a difference between people mix this up all the time. There's a difference between surrendering to the flow, accepting, knowing that you still have this immense power available to you at any time and this intelligence available to you at any time, but then also still not forcing it and letting that smaller part of you micromanage and think, if it doesn't go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, I'm screwed. Like nothing's going to work. That's not true. Like there is usually a grander plan, a better way if you just open yourself to it. So I thought that was a really good reminder that I definitely needed also.
I want to dive deeper on this topic with you because that sense of trust and surrender of the divine timing, I've definitely been caught up in surrendering too much without making a choice. And I do think I needed to go all the way there to be at this empowered place, embodied place. But for a long time I was like, well, if it's not for my highest good to not make money, then okay, I surrender to it. But it's like that's not actually like what he's trying to get at. It's like knowing and trusting what you desire. So, like using your clairs, claircognizantly knowing and trusting in your whole body, in your whole soul, that what is coming for you is coming, but then also surrendering how it happens. So, that's kind of how I've switch the distinction in my like like understanding where it's not surrendering to all of it. It's like, no, you got to make a choice of what you actually want and who do you want to become. And then make
Mhm.
aligned action from that space. But then the how or like how the stream of income is coming. Like for me, I didn't even know how I was going to pay for my wedding. And then instead it started coming from other avenues that I didn't expect. And then I didn't have
Wow.
to pay for my wedding at all. So just like little things like this, like, oh, I thought, I was going to have all this money for my business and I actually ended up getting it from my condo. And now I have an abundance of money to support my business, but I thought it was going to come from my it's like these like little
Right.
things that you are like trying to funnel vision. Like you either try to control where the income is coming, then you're restricting it from coming from maybe other places, or you surrender too much without making the decision because so that feels like you're surrendered, but it's like fake surrender because you're like not empowered in that choice. And so it's kind
Right.
of like this navigation of, or at least what I've been navigating, it's to like my choice empowerment and then using the claircognizance, right, of like that trust.
Thank you for bringing up like very concrete examples too, because love how he writes, but it can be difficult to bring it into reality sometimes. And what you're saying is so true that I think the pendulum can swing from one side to the other. And I am definitely aware of swinging to the let me just surrender. I don't want to deal with this. And also, that can come from a place of not wanting confrontation, right? Like, oh, this person's really pushing back on XYZ that I want, or this thing that I've been whatever. Let's say I wanted to get a new car and it's like, oh, the dealership is giving me a hard time and I'm not getting the price I want. And I'll just wait until it's more convenient. But what if you just asked one more time in a slightly different way? And then it was the right person that you got on the phone. So I agree with you. I think it's a constant push and pull, and it's kind of part of the fun or the game of life to think of life in that more curious way that you were saying and not feel like guilty if you leaned too far in one direction or the other, because I really think you just keep self correcting over time and course correcting. And I think he talks about this too. Like, I don't think it's wrong to be slightly too far on this side and slightly too far on that side, because ultimately you're just going to like balance the pendulum back at the end of the day, even if it's uncomfortable.
He talks about guilt later in the book, that that is not God conscious and like love, it's like the
Hmm.
opposite of love. But he does say something in this chapter where it's like if the person takes stock of what he has learned, discovers and recounts the errors in his thoughts, so like his mistakes, his regrets, etc., and arrives at the truth through examination of his error, right? So like reflecting on the mistake he had made, then boldly strikes again, so does it again, right? Calls the dealership one more time in a different way. He is using the great powers of the universe. And so, but if the error builds the shame and self pity and remorse, he will suffer the added consequences as long as he carries those illusions with him, for they will continue to develop in his life as long as he thinks them into the subconscious. So it's really this
Hmm.
sense of perseverance, no matter what. Failure doesn't exist. Failure is giving up and
Hmm.
continue. So success is actually from believing in yourself and continuing to do so forever. The highest good is to your desires and success. It is not anything other.
Yes, I love that. And this is maybe a cutesy little analogy, but I just reflect on when I spent time in Paris and there were so many little side streets and these beautiful little alleys where you would have never discovered an adorable boutique or a restaurant or a cafe if you didn't just wander a little this way, or oops, I made a wrong turn, because it's impossible. It's not like a grid at all there. It's like these little like winding, almost like corridors, it feels like. And I was thinking of ultimately getting to our destination or our goal in that way, where instead of thinking like, oh, I took this big detour because I, didn't call him again, or I surrendered too much, or whatever the case is, you feel like you're on the micromanaging side or the surrendering side, whatever it is. Instead of looking at it as like you're derailed or it's a detour, think of it as like a little side street adventure. Like, oh, I would have never discovered this. And I would have never learned this about myself if I hadn't wandered down that little alley and then whoop, back onto the easier path where it's like bringing me closer. But I never stopped moving. I never just sat down on the ground and said, I'm not going forward. I give up. I think that's really what he's talking about. And not to jump ahead, but he talks about the universe always expanding and universal subconscious mind, as you were saying, like getting to know itself more deeply in every way, in every form, all of life having consciousness. And I was like, whoa, like that was like very like trippy, mind blowing to think about, that like everything's always expanding, and even these detours and side streets and things, like it's all for a reason, it's all for a purpose, and contributing to the greater subconscious mind. And I was like, whoa, we're all connected and it's so much bigger than we think, So that's a little reassuring thing too for anyone who feels like I've been going around in circles. Even those circles you've been going around are contributing to the expanding of the universe. So there you go.
We're on the same wavelength, which we did open a Akashic communication grid before this podcast, just so you guys know. But I literally was going to say the same thing, that God wants to know itself more. And then there's like a specific line highlighted, I highlighted somewhere, where God is infinite and cannot know itself unless it becomes finite. So that's why they created man. And so,
Hmm.
like, books like this, and Brida, author of The Alchemist, or the Paulo Coelho wrote that, as well as what are the other books that I just read? Many Lives, Many
Oh
Masters. So many
yeah.
of these books talk about living life. Oh, Conversations with God, experientially. So what you're saying, like going down these side streets, you're experiencing life, and that enough is expanding consciousness as a whole. When you start going in the loops and then regretting or holding on to the shame of that, that's when you stop experiencing life and that's when you stop growing
Mhm.
consciousness. So it's actually like it's your perspective again, right? Like you're continuing to go forward and over time like you said in the quote, it's like learning from what you might perceive as judgment or mistake and then how can you learn like okay, now I'm going to feel into my intuition or trust, that I'm going the right way and then you feel this expansiveness within you and then you're always divinely guided and then everything happens for a reason and like you're
Mhm.
just experiencing life which is the reason of life without feeling that judgment and guilt and then which in turn expands consciousness which in turn feeds into the universal subconscious mind of the collective.
It's so beautiful, and how perfect that these types of things are going viral on social media too. Like, I think I saw something the other day that was like, "Everything is a win when the goal is to just experience." And I was like, "That's what U.S.
Yeah.
Anderson is saying." And it was some, you know, just montage of beautiful pictures from Pinterest and then that quote, and it went viral with like millions of views. But I'm like, that is an indication of people are resonating with that or seeing that that's true, that we don't need to be thinking that if I don't check all these things off a list in a specific order, I'm not successful. It's not a win. Like, I do think it's great to have goals, but at the same time, like, a huge part of the enjoyment of life and being able to grow is, yeah, the journey, not the destination. So all these corny things end up actually ringing true in a very deeper, more profound way when you really let yourself sit with it and, yeah, just let it sink in.
Yeah. And so, okay, so this moves us into chapter 3, the mind. This is where he really goes into the mind and like
Mhm.
survival and just like how our thoughts really do shift our reality. And so I have a quote here and I put, holy shit. So let me just see what it is. But it's
I
like
love it.
a young lad who from birth had been affected by a hideous malformity of the skin, a thick crustaceous development called elephant hide, and to whom medical science could do nothing has now a normal skin through hypnosis. How? So he talks about the power of hypnosis, which I just had a hypnotherapy session with our friend Adriana
Oh, I love
about my
that.
fear of the ocean. And I haven't gone in yet, but when I went, I did feel a visceral difference in just noticing the waves when I had like from before the session. So he talks so deep about the positive, the techniques of the hypnotherapy, how it goes directly to your subconscious and how powerful it is. And so he says, how? By the simple expedient of telling him when his conscious mind was out of the way that his skin was clearing up and then his skin cleared. And so it was like, that's just so wild and proof. And I know I've talked about this before, but our conscious mind is only like makes up 5% of our being. And so what we
100%.
logically think about is so small. It's like the surface. The subconscious makes up 95% of our thoughts, patterns, and behaviors. So accessing through hypnotherapy and all this subconscious reprogramming to bring that into the conscious mind is really going to be the profound work. This is where the work is done. This is where the change works. And this is where the magic is.
That story also, like, gave me major chills because you hear certain things like that happening nowadays, but I feel like, again, and it's nothing against our society, there's so many beautiful technological developments. However, I think people tend to go for quick fixes, like, and consumption before going within. And this is just an observation, but there's always this new holistic cream or this or that. And that's beautiful. Like, use it as a supplement or even as like a placebo. But I think going to the hypnosis types of modalities, I know that's a whole realm. There's like hypnotherapy, and then there's other types of deeper hypnosis that are like regression, past life regression and stuff like that. I think is an amazing avenue to explore in conjunction. It can be integrative, right? Integrative approaches are great. But I just kept thinking about that as I was listening to that story, Danny, how a lot of people, for better or for worse, it's like they just want to look outside of themselves. And I'm not saying you can't combine both, but we have so much power within. Like, if only we could tap into that. And like you said, it's only what, like 5%? That's like crazy that we're only perceiving 5%. And I just wanted to say quickly, I wrote down the 6 great faculties to kind of have people visualize it: memory, reason, imagination, intuition, faith, conscious choice that he talked about throughout chapter 3 in the mind. And I was like, huh, trying to think about how like memory does not dictate our imagination, our intuition and our faith like work together to bring about manifestation. Our conscious choice is the driver. Like just thinking about it in these like 6 different buckets was really helpful for me because I think a lot of people think it's all kind of lumped together and there's no distinguishing between them. And I was like, no, actually, your memory, your lived experiences do not have to dictate at all your conscious choice or how you imagine the future at all if you don't want it to. Like it can be really informative for yourself, but it does not have to be your familiar past doesn't have to become a predictable future if you don't want it to. Thought that was really, really empowering and important to remind people.
Okay, I wanna dive deeper into this. I know we're only on chapter 3, so we're definitely gonna have a episode 2, Gigi, if you're cool with that.
Yes, I'm so down for that.
But the first thing you mentioned, just we'll skip to just chapter 10 real quick
Yeah.
about medical science and how it now freely admits that 80% of all diseases is of mental origin. And how he talks about, like, he has energetic healing of actual diseases. So he goes over headaches, fatigue, indigestion, constipation, obesity, and all these things, and what actual the core mental thought process behind it and how to cure it. And so we'll go more into that in number 10, but such a beautiful concept that I love these books like Louise Hay and him who like have
Mhm.
this like energetic or mental or some a different cause, right? Like a root cause that can really
Yeah.
transform your life. And so what you said about these buckets, I kind of want to go deeper into it because I don't even think I understood that when you said that because it's like, oh, the subconscious, reprogram it. Cool, you're done. Like, okay, but it's like it's in these
Mhm.
moments he mentions like it's because you can't think about the past, right? The memory, but you also can't be anxious of the future. It's like in this present moment, like what were the 6 again? Like reasoning,
Yeah.
choice.
Let me bring back my because I was like, this is so
Yeah.
helpful to have it. Okay. The 6 great faculties: memory, reason, which again is like preventing you from doing something dangerous that would hurt you, right? Imagination, which is our creative power, intuition, which is what we use to surrender to infinite intelligence, universal subconscious, and faith, which he talks about in a very like matter of
Mhm.
fact way, like it's really conviction, and conscious choice being what you choose will influence and impress the subconscious. So it's like people think, well, great, I couldn't control the first 7 years of my life. And so much of me has already been decided and determined. Am I just hopeless? Like, what am I going to do? Just live this life forever? It's like, absolutely not. That's why we have conscious choice. And how fascinating that Apple TV just released something that is all about how the first 7 years of your life dictate the rest of your life. I forget the name of it, but my friend mentioned it and she was like, it's really
More
fascinating.
people need to
And
know about that.
yeah, I was like, "Whoa." And so I was like, "I need to watch this." But it goes into like the science of how like formative that period of time is. But this is another side note that maybe you and I would relate to more than US Anderson, but soul contracts and how our soul chooses to incarnate in this time and in our certain city and in our certain, family. And that even if we have those 7 years that we quote unquote couldn't control, maybe on a soul level, it still was a choice. And then now our conscious mind can either transcend or continue the patterns that were built during that time. And it actually is all like one big lesson that was meant to be, you know?
Oh, I love it so
So,
much. Yes, I thought us about soul contracts a lot in the later ends of, like, the health, but yes, like, the first 7 years, like, your soul did decide that so that you could overcome, and it's always, like, that concept of, like, you teach what you heal through, and now you're so a master at that because you've experienced that, and you can hold another level of empathy for the people that you come across that are divinely contracted with you to learn through you or learn from you.
mhm. And I just I think it's so fascinating. Like his whole thought plus faith equals creation formula might seem oversimplified to some people because they're like, yeah, well, I definitely really wanted everything with every fiber of my being to be this way. And it, on paper would have been really great. So why didn't it happen? And that's where there's so much nuance to this. Like I wrote, his definition of faith is complete acceptance or conviction that energizes thought into manifestation. He's not saying like you just think something once. say, I have faith in it. And then it's going to like knock on your door in 10 minutes, like with the delivery. Like that's not what he's saying at all. He's making a point though that faith doesn't have to be this raw emotional process, or it doesn't have to be something that you only experience in a church pew. It can just be this conviction and steadfast mental determination and certainty that no matter what's happening in the outside world, like you're going to get what you set out to receive. So I just thought that was interesting. Faith is like talked about in so many different contexts in our world. And I'm like, huh, I like his definition, like complete acceptance or conviction that brings about what you want.
And I think he does relate faith to trust a little bit, I think somewhere in the book, and I
Hmm.
see it as embodiment. To have true faith, you hold it in the body. You truly feel it so that everything you do is from that place of faith. Because then he says, like, when the doubt comes in, then the energy shifts to doubt, and then you create whatever that fear is that you're blocking. But then you
Hmm.
move back and back. So if it's just a thought, not ingrained in the subconscious, in the body, right? Then it's like you're going back and forth, and then you're not holding that frequency, kind of like what we talked about in the beginning. But he talks about the intuition, which I think is really powerful because he pretty much says intuition is an aspect of mental power that enables every person to contact certain aspects of the subconscious mind with ease. And he pretty much is like, this is nothing mystical or occult. Since the universal subconscious mind knows everything, it does not figure out anything. The answer is synonymous, synonymous with the question. So he's pretty much like, this is fact. This is it. Like everyone is intuitive. We all have limitless power for creation that flows through us. And this like connection to this living field of consciousness, which I believe is the Akashic records, but also, you
Yes,
know, is it's just so powerful.
I love that. And the fact that he says, I'm paraphrasing here, but basically the universal subconscious mind is this living, breathing entity of which we're all an intrinsic part and we all have access. So to your point, it's like you can be as intuitive as you want to be or don't want to be. Conscious choice. We all know people who we definitely know people who were born with certain gifts and then maybe shut them down due to societal expectations or different things that they were navigating. They didn't feel comfortable showing that they had these beautiful God given gifts, whether it was intuitive abilities or talking to, the other side or whatever it was. And then later in life, they realize actually, like, I do consciously want to open up this gift again. And then the floodgates opened. So again, we can choose to not access or access this depending on what we want. And I think people sometimes get afraid, like, am I not going to be able to control it? What if I do open up the floodgates and then I want to go back? Well, you can create boundaries. And I know, for example, you've mentioned in the past, like sometimes I just get this stream of, information from my guides and I'm like, can you guys quiet down a little bit? And I think that the universal subconscious mind is what he's referencing. And we can call it guides, we can call it, however we want, claircognizance. We can decide how much we want. Otherwise, it's going to be like a fire hose of information all the time. I don't know. I found that very comforting because sometimes you're like, whoa, like I can't take all this in, but you have control. And like, yeah, I think that's a very beautiful thing to remember.
I love everything you just said. And there's this quote that says, this intuitive contact comes when you get yourselves out of the way and let only the mind and all creation provide you with the answers. And you speak about like this fear, right? Like, because people, when they were kids, they would see a lot of my clients would see beings in their bedroom or see something, and they're like, I used to be psychic or I used to be intuitive, but then the fear or the conditioning or parents told them, like, those invisible friends don't exist, and they were told otherwise. And then that kind of, you mentioned a little bit of the fear, right? Like, what if the floodgates open, then I want to close it? And like, how would it feel though to have such a deep connection to God consciousness in the universe and trust yourself so much that you can hold that communication grid to your soul? Like,
Ooh,
just take
that's
a
so
moment to like
beautiful.
imagine how that would feel. Would you still feel scared and wanting to close the communication? And so that's just an
Hmm.
invitation to a lot of my listeners, because I know a lot of my listeners are so psychic, so intuitive, but there's this like lack of maybe, it could be trust, it could be, translation, not knowing how it's coming through because they just haven't developed it. don't know their clairs or cosmic soul language, or maybe there is this like fear of limiting belief. And I will say, like, for me, when I was first connecting to the galactic realms and quantum realms, I had a huge fear of connecting to them. So actually, like, I didn't
Mm.
realize it consciously. I was like, this is so fun. I want to talk to my Lyran past life and like all these things. But my body could not hold it. So I would go into channeling sessions and my body would literally shake because I was like pushing it too much. And then I would get sick because I'm pushing my body into something like my subconscious is restricting what my conscious wants to do. So there was this like almost this battle, this contradiction. And
Yeah.
so I actually had to surrender, open my body up to allow and trust not only myself, but what I was connecting to. And now now I can hold the energy. I don't like my body doesn't viscerally shake. It's like I can actually just like flow with it. And it is about trust, about like, and creating agency in yourself and the unseen world.
I love that. That's such a powerful example because I do think that it's interesting how the world will tell us to quiet our intuition and just keep pushing through. And your imagination is just make believe. And it's almost like all of this subliminal messaging. I'm saying it pretty clearly, but it will be like embedded within our culture and things. And I'm like, why is it that we're supposed to be dimming our light and questioning our power and connection, like you said, and basically not trusting ourselves? Like everything is being designed to not have you trust yourself. And another really quick side note, because I know you'll be touching on themes about divine feminine and women and how powerful we are specifically. I was thinking about it. If more women were trusting themselves on a deep soul level in the way that we're talking about and trusting their gifts and their communication and connection with God, they would not be consuming as much. They would not be outsourcing as much. They would honestly, like, there would just be so much more peace on earth. Like there wouldn't be all this burnout and it would probably not be so great for like capitalistic society, but because women would be like, actually, I got this on my own. I don't need to be questioning and doubting. And, for example, that's a whole other conversation, like in hospitals and, making birth like this big medical emergency. I don't know. Like, has it always been that way? For eons and eons? Like, or is that more in the past couple of centuries? Let's think about it. So it's really interesting to think how it all ties back into these bigger themes that we're experiencing modern day. And that can maybe bring people to just go about their daily life with that curiosity and awareness. Like, if I trusted myself more, would I be as worried? Would I be buying this thing? Would I be stress eating? Would I be, freaking out or whatever it is that you're leaning on as a coping mechanism? If I really trusted myself and had that connection, would I be doing this right now?
You said so many things. 3 things I wanna touch on, and he says, like, you can have trust in one category of your life, but in the other categories, you might not, and so trust can't isn't always this, like, all-encompassing thing, like, I trust myself, right? It could be like, well, I trust myself to find love, but maybe not to make money, right? And he mentioned, like, when you
Hmm.
actually can put that in all categories, that's when you reach peace and enlightenment. And so I wanna share 2
Yes.
examples of things that came up of just learning how to trust yourself. Because like, we can say it as this, like, vague thing, like, "Oh, I trust myself. I don't know what you're talking about." But actually, like, to go deeper on a subconscious. So I teach the Akashic Records, right? And so in my Uncharted Akasha, I had a one-on-one with a student, and one of this lady, she was in awe of, like, what she was seeing in the Akashic Records. I'm like, "Whoa, this was so magical." And we're in week 3 now of Uncharted Akasha. And so after, we did a little integration, I was like, "So how'd you feel?" She's like, "Honestly, I've seen this library before. I didn't trust it, though. I thought I made it up." And so she never accessed
Mm.
this limitless wisdom because she thought she was making it up. And now through my guidance and the guidance of her spirit guides, she's able to be like, "Oh, whoa, this information is truth and is valid." And the messages that come through are often simple. Like your mind will create these like big elaborate things that are like hard to understand. But like, for example, my soul baby, she said, "You are ready and you're exactly who you need to be." Oh my gosh, that like that shifted so much. And when this comes out, I'm gonna share it. I just found out I'm pregnant yesterday, guys. Like, and so one and done. I tried it. It
Oh
happened,
my
and I
gosh.
brought her in to the ceremony. And after we did it, she's like, "It's done." And, so just like being in communication with her the last 3 years has really brought me to this place, right? But if I hadn't trusted what she said, like, "Oh, I'm just making it up. I'm not actually ready," then I'm like counterbalancing that thought, that
Mhm.
subconscious knowing that I am ready. So it's like very,
Yeah.
very interesting. But I know I
It
just
makes
dropped
me
like,
so emotional because, like,
oh, you're so sweet.
everyone listening to this podcast, make sure you go listen to the extended reel on Instagram that Danny has. I don't know if you can pin it or
I'll link it.
something,
Yeah.
but it is so beautiful when before you even knew for sure, because you're like, I'm gonna wait a couple of weeks. You were talking about even like visions that you had, like this. It really just boils down to certainty, soul certainty, and of course we. Are thinking of things in the terms of the Akashic records and soul contracts. But you were even talking about like years from now when your, child is like an adult taking care of you when you're in old age. And like that just, oh, full body chills because it's so true. Like when we know, like, I want to be a mom or I want to do this it could be anything. We're talking about motherhood as the example. But when you can really live in the end, like get to that place where you're trusting in, yeah, all areas ideally, but just start with one if you really feel like you're stagnant in life and just see where that takes you. Because when you get a taste of that, like I guarantee you, Danny, that this is going to continue to bleed into other areas in a beautiful way where you're like, oh my gosh, like motherhood is such a portal. Like it's going to unlock new layers of abundance and layers of your business that you didn't know about and layers of your relationship, your marriage with your husband. And it's so expansive to think of things that way instead of what society will tell you, oh, when you're a mom, you're not going to be able to do this or blah, 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 blah. Like you can listen to one way or the other. And I really think that what this book is talking about and what you're talking about and what I'm reflecting is like, when you think about expansiveness, when you think about the limitlessness of the universe and God consciousness, like it's all good. Like it's all just like growth and learning. And it's very exciting. And I'm so excited for this new chapter for you.
Thank you, and I will share one more thing about this because so pretty much I tell in the Instagram video, like, a couple weeks ago, like, "I'm pretty sure I'm pregnant, I'm pretty sure it's a girl, like, we did this ritual, I opened a new communication grid with her, and she's been super chatty." And so it's interesting because I had one of my old students reach out to me, and she's like, "I couldn't believe you said that," because I was like, "What if you aren't? And then what if you were wrong?" And so I was like, "So you're
Mm.
projecting this is a normal fear." Yeah, a fear that, like, what you trust is incorrect. And so I invited her into my process. I was like, "Well, if I said I was and then I wasn't, I would do 2 things. I would reflect on what I needed to shift and why, what lesson I needed to learn, but then also the shame and the guilt that might come with it. I sat in the energy already. So I already felt what I feared. And so once I was able to feel that and sit in that, all I felt after was truth and abundance and this like knowing. And so it's
Mhm.
oftentimes like what you fear will happen is often the portal to what you want. And so I it was so beautiful that I was able to like go through that, process that, and then share that with her. And then she's like, "You're just so inspirational." And then now the physical manifestation of literally what you spoke came true within 2 weeks of ovulation,
Right.
So it really is. And obviously this power I have, quote unquote power in this category, yeah, like what you said, like focus that on this, learn, master that, and then start to infuse it into other categories of your life.
Yes, and really, Danny, I just have to commend you. Gotta gas you up a little bit. You really are being a way shower because no matter what the outcome ends up being in terms of your journey with pregnancy and so forth, like it's just that living example that we can do things our own way and our own style on our own terms. And you can be as open or as private as you want about things. And I think people think they have to follow a script. Like, it's not the case. Like you really can let things unfold according to your own conscious choice. And I just think you're the embodiment of that. Like no matter if someone agrees with you or disagrees with your approach, like you're just like, I'm doing me. And that is like exactly what also U.S. Anderson is talking about this whole time in the book is like, yes, the separateness and the individuality is technically an illusion and we're all part of the same subconscious mind. But at the same time, it's part of the fun and the growth to be able to like be confident in your own individuality. It's like a paradox, but it makes sense. Like, you should be able to say, "This is how I'm doing things. Let me be a living example for you." And then also know, like, at the end of the day, we're all coming from the same the same collective consciousness. And, it's just yeah, it's super, super fascinating, and I can't
Yeah.
wait to see how the next generation will kind of carry this all forward too, because I just even think about a couple generations ago. I don't know if it was as mainstream to be able to talk about these things in the way that we're talking about them. Obviously, there weren't podcasts like this in the early 1900s or at the time that U.S. Anderson was writing this, you know? So it's just, it makes me excited for the next generation because they're going to be able to access all of this information and figure out what they want to do with it and express themselves as individuals while realizing like I have infinite intelligence available to me at all times. And that's like the perfect balance, I think.
Gigi, that's so beautiful, and yeah, I invite people to, like, bring curiosity, like, people wait until they're, like, I think 12 weeks pregnant to share, because, and I think it's because the fear of what
Mhm.
might happen, the miscarriage and all that, but I'm really in the open of, like, whatever happens as part of my journey, I'm gonna share it. There's no shame in it. It's my contract,
Mhm.
and just continuing to be anchored in me despite the
Yes.
fear of, whatever's coming through. And so, Gigi, I'm gonna end us here
I was
at
gonna
the
say, I
hour
was like, I'm
mark,
looking at the clock. I'm like,
um,
okay, this is a
but
good place. We
yeah,
got through
yeah.
up to like chapter
What's the
6
4?
almost.
No, I
Or
think it's
oh,
only
okay, chapter
4.
5.
But what to look forward to, he does validate Atlantis, Lemuria, Noah's Ark, all those things, Easter Island. He does validate, Abraham Lincoln having, like, these near-death experiences. He opens up to a lot more, and I just think going deeper would be really cool if you are cool with having a part
Yes.
2 with
I
that,
was
and we can do
hoping
it
we
at
could.
our leisure. I think I really trust in the divine timing, and, like, I'll post this one in the next couple a week or 2, maybe the next week, and then whenever we wanna book or do our second one, we can kinda just really go deep into all the other magic.
Yes, and I can't wait to hear what people think, and I hope people just grab a copy, even if it's just from their local library, and listen to it as an audiobook. Anything you can do on YouTube, it's free. Brian Scott is the narrator that I prefer on YouTube. You can just Google Brian Scott, Three Magic Words, and listen to it there. I could not recommend this book enough. I just want to say I can't wait for part 2. And Danny, I'm so grateful that we can connect in this way. It's really the highlight of my week. So
I'm so honored that you were here and just, like, share your beautiful wisdom. Top, top, top books for me. I will probably read this every year, one of those books. And, Gigi, where can we find you?
yes, I would love if everyone could connect on Instagram and YouTube. Journey with Gigi. It's just Journey with and then GIGI. And hopefully I'll have some more announcements coming soon about more content and wisdom that I want to share. I love making long form videos. So hopefully I will be doing more of that soon. And I actually feel inspired to maybe make a video spinoff on this book too. So stay tuned for that. If you are choosing to subscribe, then you'll probably see that in the coming weeks and months as well.
I love that so much. Thank you, Gigi. And I have actually met Gigi in real life. She came down here to the South Bay, and just
Yes. I
when you
need to
do an
come back.
online when you do an online class, like, it's amazing. You feel people's energy, but then to meet in person, it's like, oh,
To
so
actually be able to give
magical.
someone a hug and like be in
Yeah.
your backyard at the beach, like that was so special. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So thank you so much, everyone. I will list everything we mentioned in the comments. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe if you are interested in this beautiful, magical information. And until next time.
Yes, until next time.